Most of you know me, but I'm retired Lieutenant Nelson Zoch, who retired from the Homicide Division in 2004. We're here today to give you a background of this investigation in order for our guest speaker, Mr. Tritico, to have the maximum time to discuss the legalities involved to the date. On Thursday, April 3rd, 2003, shortly after 10:10 a.m., I received an assignment to lead the investigation into the capital murder of our Houston police officer, Charles Clark, as well as Mrs. Alfreda Jones, who is a civilian employee of the ACE check cashing service in the 5300 block of South Loop East. Both Officer Clark and Mrs. Jones were DOA at the scene. Our initial information was very sketchy, and the only thing we had to begin with was 3 black males in a small white car. As the investigation continued throughout this terrible day, we received information into the Homicide Division, and we pursued that information throughout the rest of the day, throughout the night, and into the next day. By Friday evening, 6 p.m., we had 3 suspects in jail that we strongly felt were involved in this case. Harris County District Attorney's Office Chief Prosecutor Dan Rizzo worked with us throughout this investigation, and with his help, we were able to file capital murder charges on Elijah Joubert, who murdered Mrs. Jones in cold blood, and also on Alfred D. Brown, who murdered Officer Clark in the same manner. Another suspect was involved, and he participated in the robbery only. Convictions were obtained on all 3 of these, with Dan Rizzo leading the prosecution. Elijah Joubert got the capital murder death sentence conviction, as did Alfred Brown. Deshaun Glaspie, the 3rd suspect, pled guilty to robbery and received a 35-year sentence. We're here today as the conviction of Alfred Brown has been overturned, and he has actually been released from custody. Mrs. Devin Anderson, the DA at the time of the overturned conviction, was forced to drop charges at that point because almost all of the witnesses had changed their stories. If this was not bad enough, Harris County elected District Attorney Kim Ogg has pursued this investigation to the extent that she went to Commissioner's Court and received monetary assistance to hire a civil attorney to reinvestigate this case. Her goal, we believe, was to totally and completely exonerate Alfred Brown. While that pursuit was not totally successful, both Ms. Ogg and her assistant, Mr. John Rayleigh, have filed State of Texas Bar Association complaints of prosecutorial misconduct against Mr. Dan Rizzo, who has since retired and lives out of state. One of those complaints has been dismissed. The other bar complaint is pending. Mr. Rizzo was forced to pursue legal counsel in regard to this matter because he felt like they were actually trying to get him disbarred from practicing law in the future. The Homicide Division took up the investigation once again, and under the lead of Lieutenant John McGowan, they reinvestigated our original investigation, and his conclusion, totally supported by the current Chief of Police, has been the same, that Alfred Brown murdered Officer Clark. Here at the HPROA, we have requested Attorney-at-Law Mr. Chris Tritico to be here today to enlighten us on the circumstances and the complicated legalities surrounding this travesty of justice. It's my pleasure to present to you Mr. Chris Tritico, who has been assisting Mr. Rizzo with his legal situation.
You have to look at this case from where it started. Alfred Brown said, and here's the history of this call. Alfred Brown said, I was at Erica Dockery's condo, and I called her from there. That's where he started with this. And then they said, the call record proves that Alfred Brown made the call from Erica Dockery's house. That's when we found it, when they first found it. He said that was their defense. This call record proves he made the call. Then they said, when they said it was a 3-way call, they said, no, there was no 3-way call. Then they said, they made all this up. That's not a real call record. They just made this up. And then they admitted in the writ process, when we proved it, in the grievance process, John Rayleigh admitted in his response, it's a 3-way call. So this has gone full circle to them finally admitting it's a three-way call. All the way around to admitting it's a three-way call. And now they're saying, but the three-way call is still exculpatory. The whole thing has gone full circle all the way around. The evolution of this call shows everything we've been saying from the very beginning. But there's one question that they can't answer. One question they cannot answer. If Alfred Dwayne Brown was at Erica Dockery's house the entire time, why would he have to make a three-way call at all? They can't answer that question. Why would you make a three-way call? To call your girlfriend, to tell her to turn on channel 26, to look at the news about a double homicide that you had nothing to do with and you knew nothing about. They can't answer that question. Can you? Now, after all this time, the DA's office, when all this came up, as you heard, I'm going to get me a cup of this coffee.
Well.
So Devin Anderson dismissed the case, but she did not declare Alfred Brown innocent. What that did was he was not entitled to the compensation that Texas law says you get when you've been unlawfully incarcerated. So he filed a 1983 claim against the state of Texas and against Harris County. That's what's been proceeding all these years. When Kim Ogg ran for office, for some reason, she said, I'm going to look into this. She picked this up as a cause. I don't know why. After looking over this evidence, after reviewing this case, I don't know why. But when Kim got elected, and I've known Kim Ogg for over 30 years. I've known her as long as I've known Dan Rizzo. And, but she picked it up. And she hired John Raley, another man I've known for a very long time. And she hired John Raley, made him a special prosecutor, and he was asked to review the case to do two things: determine if there was enough evidence to retry Alfred Brown or to declare him actually innocent. I can't tell that there was ever a review to determine that he should be retried. And my estimation is this was only a review headed straight down that actual innocence road. But it's not my decision, that was theirs. I got a call one day from Dan Rizzo. I've litigated cases against Dan for years, and he's a man of honor. He's a man of integrity and strength. He did his job well. I've liked him from the day I met him. I have respect for people who do their job. I don't care if you win, if you beat me in an honest and fair trial, okay? The facts are the facts. And Dan Rizzo is not a man who hid those facts. He gave you the evidence, and he went to trial. And sometimes he won, and sometimes he lost. And that's the way it is, and that's the way it's supposed to be. I believe that when we go to trial, and the facts bear out what the facts are, and the jury makes an honest and fair decision based on those facts, then that's the way it is. And at the end of the day, we'll go to the bar and we'll have a drink. But we don't cheat along the way, and that's the way Dan litigated cases, and that's why I have respect for him. Dan called me at my office one day, and he said, I need to talk to you. And I knew what was going on, and I said, sure, Dan, what's up? And he said, I need your help. And I said, okay, what do you want me to do? And he said, I'm afraid that I'm going to get indicted. I said, no, you're not, Dan. Nobody's going to indict you over this. And he said, well, nobody will help me. Nobody will take my call. He said, everybody I thought was my friend won't even talk to me anymore. And he said, you're the only guy that I've called that'll even answer the phone. And I said, well, Dan, come on over. I'll talk to you. I said, I'm your friend. And so Dan came over to the office, and I met with him, and I took his case. To me, not only is Dan my friend, I didn't get into this business to make judgments about people. I got into this business to help people. I don't give a damn who they are, but Dan is my friend. And so when he needed help, I'm going to help him. If I can represent Timothy McVeigh in the Oklahoma City bombing, I could damn sure help Dan Rizzo when the DA's office is attacking him, all right? And so when Dan came over and he's hurting, and he thinks every person in Harris County, everybody that he has relied on, everybody that he's helped is turned their back on him, somebody has to stand up and say, I'll help you. And so I did. My law partner and I did. And when they filed the first grievance on him, we responded to it. And the county had given Dan a lawyer. I can't remember that guy's name. But the county agreed to give him a lawyer. Dan met with that lawyer, and his advice was, surrender your bar license. That was that guy's advice. You're retired anyway, just surrender your license. And Dan said, no, I didn't do anything wrong. I'm not surrendering my license. And so Dan had to pay us a lot of money, unfortunately. We cut our fee, but he still had to pay us a lot of money. Ray Hunt will tell you about that. And we won that first grievance. It took about a year because of litigation the way it is. We took about a year. And we filed a response, and we won that grievance. And in the interim, Rayleigh had been appointed, and so we were working on that. And I waited 10 months to hear from John Rayleigh. Now, you would think, all of y'all have investigated cases. When you're investigating a case, don't you want to talk to every witness? You would think that you would want to talk to Dan Rizzo. One of the key points in this whole case was whether or not Dan Rizzo got that critical email. Everybody's heard about the email, right? Has everybody heard about the email? Do I need to explain the email? I waited 10 months to hear from John Rayleigh, thinking he would want to find out about the email. Maybe ask some questions of Dan Rizzo about what he did, how he investigated the case. Did he investigate the case? Did the police do the investigation, or was he involved in the investigation? Because I'd been hearing leaks all this time that Rayleigh's opinion was that Dan Rizzo was leading this investigation. He was telling the police what to do, telling them not to talk to people. So I would have thought that John Rayleigh would have wanted to talk to Dan Rizzo. So I waited 10 months, never heard from John Rayleigh. Rayleigh called me one day when I was driving back from a board meeting in Huntsville, and he said, hey, I need to talk to you. And I said, well, I've been waiting to hear from you. He said, yeah, I got a couple of questions for you. Do you have some time? And I said, no, not right now, but when do you want to meet with Dan? He said, oh, I don't want to talk to Dan. I just thought me and you've been friends a long time, I just talked to you. I said, you don't want to interview Dan Rizzo, the lead prosecutor on the case? John, you don't want to interview him? He said, no, I'm about through with my investigation. I'll just ask you a couple of questions, and then we'll wrap it up. And I'm about out of time anyway. I said, incredible. That's incredible, John, but I'll tell you what, I'll give you a call when I get back to the office. And so myself and my law partner and my investigator got him on the phone. We got back to the office, and he didn't ask us one question about the work that Dan Rizzo did on the case. He only asked us about our response to the grievance. Didn't care about the case. So I blew up. And I said, look, I got nothing to say to you, John. You're not interested in this case. You're only interested in the grievance, which has nothing to do with what you were asked to investigate, so never mind. And we wrote him a very long letter and explained a whole bunch of stuff. And one of the things we explained was the drive time. That one of the things Dan did do in preparation for trial was instruct officers to drive from the scene to the VA apartments to Erica Dockery's house, and that it could be done in the time to get him, Alfred Brown, back to the apartment in time to make the phone call. And that was critical, We put that in the letter. Now, all of you investigated cases before, wouldn't you want to know that? Would you have driven that yourself? Maybe caused one of your investigators to do it? John Rayleigh got on that ever impressive investigative tool, Google Maps. And that's how he determined that the drive time was not possible, by using Google Maps to do it. Now, the thing about Google Maps is it tells you drive time based on the time that you get on it today, not the drive time and the conditions as they were at the time. So he never asked the officers who did it, actually did it at that time, nor did he do it himself. These are the things that we discovered. So after we won the first grievance, Mr. Rayleigh filed another grievance against Dan. Now we got tired of him, tired of messing with him. So we filed the response to the second grievance not too long ago. I have the response to that grievance right here. This is just what we wrote. It's 117 pages written. With attachments, it's over 700 pages, not counting the video and the audio attachments. And then Mr. Rayleigh replied to that. So we just filed this yesterday or 2 days ago. And we had a short reply to this with some audio attachments, because Mr. Rayleigh said that we cherry-picked the evidence, and he used one of the audio statements made by, who was it? One of the witnesses that said that it was Mr. Lieutenant McGalen's statement, and he said that one of the witnesses said that that Brown, in the statement, he said that Brown was at his apartment, and the witness said it, told him that. I'm sorry, yeah. When we listened to the tape, and when they interviewed him in the tape, Mr. Rayleigh told the bar, this tape says that the witness says he was at the apartment. And when you listen to the tape, what he says on the tape was, Brown was back at the apartment, but he left that out. And so I told the bar, honesty and integrity are very important when you're looking at these things. So here's the tape. Please listen to it. What he says, what he's back at the apartment, not he was at the apartment. And when you're deciding who's cherry picking the evidence, please take a look at this. And this is where we are in this thing. And this is how they're attacking a career prosecutor. And this is the evidence they're using to let a man go that put a gun to the forehead of an officer who was less than a month from retirement. So, you know, I made my life, I've given 31 years to defending the criminally accused and defending the rights of people who have been attacked by our government. And when Dan Rizzo got attacked by our government, after giving his entire life to prosecuting those people who have done wrong, he needed someone to step up. And I've said my entire career that our Constitution, our laws have to work for everyone. They have to work for everybody. And there have to be people who step up and say, I will represent you. And when Dan Rizzo walked into my office and said, will you help me because nobody else will help me, me and my partner said, we will help you. And I don't give a damn what anybody else says. And the people in my organization made me get off of our listserv. I'm the former president of the Harris County Criminal Lawyers Association. And when I took Dan's case, they said, you have to get off this listserv so we can talk about Dan Rizzo. And I said, fine, I'll get off your damn listserv. Because I'm not only going to represent Dan Rizzo, I'm going to win this case. Because Dan Rizzo's an honorable man and he didn't do anything wrong, and Alfred Brown is the guy who did something wrong. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
You know, I was at the HPROA meeting when Chris Tritico spoke on the tragic situation where Alfred Brown was released, and now a great former prosecutor, Dan Rizzo, is being dragged through the mud. I can tell you that I've spoken with Dan Rizzo and I've spoken with Hildy Clark, the wife of Charlie Clark, and he's a very honorable man, and Hildy Clark thinks he did an outstanding job in prosecuting these three turds who killed Charlie Clark and Alfreda Jones. The sad thing is that we have a district attorney in Kim Ogg who set out before she ever was elected DA to make sure that she was going to clear this person. And through a bunch of crap, as Chris Tritico told you about, they were able to convince an appeals court to give this person a new trial, thinking that there was exculpatory evidence that was withheld from this case. When in fact, when we got those phone records, as Chris Tritico told you, the evidence was actually inculpatory and actually showed that it was a three-way call where Alfred Brown called from close to where the murders happened to his girlfriend's apartment, and then it was a three-way call to call back to where she worked. So everything Chris said is accurate. His accolades for Dan Rizzo are completely accurate, and Kim Ogg has now wasted $359,532 of taxpayer money paying a patent attorney by the name of John Rayleigh to declare the killer of this man right here actually innocent. And that's a sad state of affairs for Harris County, but that's where we are now. So everything he said was correct.